What's up, Renee? I see Bill's in the back there.
Yepers.
No cat yet. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, she's here.
Yeah. There we go. All right. All right, where are we at? What time we got?
It wouldn't be a meeting without the cat.
No, true. I got a meme to send you. I just found it today.
Okay.
All right, so what do we got? We got 19 of us. I guess we'll just start, huh? Whoever wants to jump in can jump in. Yeah, you ready?
Sure, we're recording.
Oh, we are already?
Yep, I just started it, so.
All right. So all my stupid banner is not in there. Good.
At least most of it's not. I think the cat comment might be.
I'm so unorganized tonight. I'll be honest with you guys. I actually forgot today was Tuesday. I lost track. I don't know if it was the holiday. I don't know what happened, but I 100% lost track today. All of a sudden it occurred to me that this was Tuesday and I panicked, absolutely panicked. So I'm a little unorganized tonight, but bear with me here. We'll get through it. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started then. We left off with section 6. We get through section 7 tonight, and we will get into section 8, which is the meat and potatoes of why you guys are here. Section 8 is going to start with what we allow the government to do. And as we go through this, you are going to have a ton of questions about stuff they're doing that is not in here. Therein lies the problem. A lot of these sections are going to be huge, and I am going to go over them generally. If you guys ever want to stop and actually have a big discussion, like on the first clause where they're able to grant, we grant them the power for taxation, we can do that, but that's going to probably take a whole hour by itself. So I'm going to hit these things generally. We can certainly talk about them all, but if you want to get in depth, just let me know, man. Send me an email. We'll put the email up there if somebody could just type it out, maybe for the chat so you guys see it. Fire me off an email. We can talk about it one day. Maybe one day we'll just take one of these sections that's important to you guys and we'll talk about that. And I can get in depth. I mean, I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff that we can refer back to. But like I said, tonight, we're just going to during the course, we're just going to kind of go over generally. One of the things when I get hired, nobody expects me to know the entire Ohio Revised Code, right? It's a book that is as thick as a Bible. Nobody expects you to know it right off the top of your head. But what we do expect from these guys is when they hear something that doesn't sound right, that might be a crime, that they know how to go back and look it up and find out if it is or not. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish here with you guys, so that when you hear something going on with the government and you're like, man, this doesn't sound right. You know what? This sounds like this is in violation of Article 1 somewhere. So now you know how to go back there and find it instead of just accepting whatever the media and the politicians tell you to accept. So that's where I'm at. Questions? Anything about last week? Anything going on with this week? Anything we need to talk about first before we jump into it?
I'm good.
Well, if you're good.
All good.
If you're good, then shit, we're all good. All right. Right on. Oh, Jeff, there he is. What's up, Jeff? All right, brother. Hey, I got your text too. I appreciate it. With your address and all that. It went to my unknown senders because I didn't have you there. Went over there today to look for something. So I wasn't ignoring you. Although I do ignore people, just so you know. I do. Weeks. And then I'll just get back to you like we just left off. So don't get mad. It's me. All right. Section 7, away we go. So section 7, clause 1. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So, clause 1 is giving the House the sole power to raise revenue. Everything has to start there, goes to the Senate, and the Senate can amend it, which has been, I think, taken advantage of in recent decades. The Senate is to the point now that they can almost amend the whole thing. They can change all the wording on it, send it back to the House, which basically changes the whole meaning of the bill. So then, that's where a lot of our problems come in, is that the Senate sends it back and the House is like, what is this shit? We did, sorry, Stephen. So they're like, what is this crap? This is not what we sent. And then we start butting heads, and that's where we're at. Clause 2, we'll get there. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty easy. Questions? Dave, I know you got something.
Got nothing. I'm frozen. I got nothing on that one.
All
That's
right.
about it.
It's about it. That one's pretty easy. So any bill raises revenue needs to originate in the House. The Senate can't do it. The president can't do it. You get some of these resolutions that come out of the Treasury Department, but those can't do it. They have to come through the House in order to be binding. All right, we'll move on. Move on to clause 2. Let me see here. This is a big clause and I've got it all split up. I'm going to go.
I do have a quick question on that, Jim.
All right, good, because I've got to pull something up.
By raising revenue, are they just talking about taxes?
Well, I don't
Because
know.
the government doesn't create anything. So if you got to raise revenue, how do you do that?
It's a good question. Are they just talking about taxes? Is everything a tax as far as raising revenue? And I'm asking.
Yeah, that's the only thing that comes to my mind as I hear that.
Man, that's a tough question because
What about fines and penalties? Is that considered revenue?
we're going to get to that too, right? I guess, could it be Obamacare? That was a penalty, right?
It was.
And that was a whole lot of money they were going to raise, or that they were raising.
That's a very interesting question for raising revenue because we haven't gotten to have the power to lay and collect taxes yet.
Correct.
So revenue is just money.
Section 8.
Yeah, revenue would just be any kind of money of any sort or type obtained any way, I would think. Not including taxes, but not necessarily excluding anything else.
You know what's funny is that I actually wrote in my notes, I'm reading them now, all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives. And what I wrote in my notes is that no bill involving taxes can originate in the Senate. So I guess I'm along the same line of thinking. I actually wrote taxes instead of revenue in my notes.
If you look in the rugged Constitution, you give is to the House of Representatives the right to start all bills for raising money by taxes.
Where would tariffs fall into this? Is that just an executive action now?
Huh.
Because tariffs raise a whole lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a tax, although I guess it is a tax. And we're going to get into that. I guess it is a tax. It's still an indirect tax.
Excises. Yeah.
Looking at the dictionary here, revenue is income, annual profits received from lands or other funds. That's the definition they had at hand when they wrote this. So income, annual profits received from lands or other funds. So,
Which
Yeah,
strikes
all
me
money.
as property tax, is income tax.
right,
It's
Yep.
exactly what I think they mean then.
yeah.
So my guess is that that probably is taxes. Now we get into taxing, obviously in section 8, in the first clause there. Yeah, I mean, good question. I don't know. I guess I just always assumed when I was reading this that raising revenue was taxes, period.
It almost sounds like the way they wrote it, that they didn't intend the country to run in a deficit continuously forever and ever.
And we get into that also. We get into that.
Well,
I
maybe
don't know if they
didn't wanna
didn't
put-
intend for there to be a deficit. I mean, I think they knew there had to be a deficit because in the Constitution, they give Congress the power to borrow money, so which is going to create a deficit. But we'll get into that as to what they thought that deficit should be,
Right.
right? The deficit was not for their great grandkids to pay off. So, yeah. All right, so moving on here. You know what? Maybe I'll just, because this is pretty big. I'm probably going to refer, if you guys have the rugged Constitution, I'm probably going to start there. Because they break it up. They break it up nice and we can talk about each section or each part of clause 2. So in clause 2, says that every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it becomes law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to that house in which it shall have originated. Well, moving on, it says, who shall then enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsideration, so if the president vetoes it, he sends it back and they decide they're going to override that veto. If after such reconsideration, 2/3 of that house shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other house, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered. And if approved by 2/3 of that house, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered on the journal of each house retrospectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the president within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be a law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be law. All right, so that's a lot. Pretty easy though, I think. I mean, if you're reading it with me, I think it's easy. I think it's hard if I read it to you. It's probably hard to follow along with. So the very first part of that is every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it becomes law, be presented to the President of the United States, right? Obviously, checks and balances, right? We're going to make sure that the House can't run wild. The Senate's going to make sure that they can't run wild when they're presenting these bills. If they both agree to it, the president's going to make sure that everybody's not running wild. If they are, then he's going to veto it. And then it has to go back and it's got to get 2/3 of each house, which is pretty tough to do in order to overturn that veto. Questions on this part right now? Not the whole thing.
It's basically Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes.
Yeah. That was one of the best Schoolhouse Rock episodes, man. Well, I'm just a bill. I'm sorry, we're recording, so I'm not going to sing the whole thing.
It's interesting that it gets returned to the house that proposed it, that where it originated. So the first clause says that all bills that raise revenue have to start in the House, but the Senate can also propose bills, and if it gets returned from the president, it goes to the Senate first.
Correct.
Right, this is another instance where there's a disconnect between clause 1 and clause 2. It is not, clause 2 is not necessarily a subset of clause 1.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think clause 2 necessarily singles out or about, it's not talking about revenue,
Right.
whereas clause 1 does.
Right.
Well, and that's true too. I mean, the Senate can certainly propose bills. They cannot propose any bills that are going to require taxation on the people. That has to originate in the people's house.
Right.
Which makes
That's an interesting statement.
Well, that's saying you're not going to be taxed or propose a tax without representation. So without
Right.
your
Exactly. Yep.
And I think it makes sense that it goes back to the house, or to the house that proposed it, because they're the ones who originally drafted it. So they would be the ones to modify it. Yeah, modify if necessary. So I think
If it gets modified, does it go back to the president then as a modified bill, or does it get ratified with a 2/3 vote?
As far as what, with the president's objections?
If it gets
Right,
modified
so-
this way, they vote on it again, and then it
Correct.
gets sent back
to the
to
other
the
house.
president, to each house.
Right.
Yes,
It-
again.
They
At
could
that
basically
point, it's a
overturn the
veto.
president's veto.
Yeah, they can
Right.
overturn it, but if they make any modifications to it,
Then that is
it goes-
the,
it
that is
starts
the,
process all over
yes.
again.
Then that would be, yes,
Correct.
that would be the one that they're voting on.
Okay.
Or no, if they make any modifications, you're right, then it goes back to the president.
Right.
Then it goes,
Right.
then it would go back. But if they decide that they want to keep it the way it is and they can get 2/3 from each side to vote for it, they could overturn that, but that's pretty hard to do.
That was actually the first time I ever heard about the 10-day rule.
Well, we're going to get into that. That is amazing. That is, I've got something highlighted here from section 7, clause 1, and I don't know. I'm just going to read it to you because I don't remember the context that I wanted to bring this up in. So I'm just going to jump back real quick to clause 1. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So what I have highlighted here in the heritage is that the final version of the clause was much weaker than the form proposed by Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, which would have required all money bills, including appropriations, to originate in the House and would have given the Senate no power at all to amend. His fear was that the Senate would become aristocratic body because of its small size, its selection by legislatures rather than by election, and its 6-year term of office. It was a maxim, he said, that the people ought to hold the purse strings. So that
I see why you're saying that, because what the first clause is saying is that bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House, and once it's made into an amendment, the Senate can go ahead and change, or a law, then the Senate can go ahead and change that with an amendment, it sounds like.
right. And Jerry was very concerned because you got to remember at the time, right now, we elect senators, but at the time they weren't. They were appointed by the states. They weren't representing the people at all. They were representing the state. So he did not want to give them the power to be able to amend things that the people wanted.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
However, that's not the way it went, obviously. I mean, his version was a lot, this version was a lot weaker than his. His was a lot stronger.
Well, and it's funny that he also mentions appropriations as well.
Right.
Like how
Not
that
just
money is
taxes.
spent.
He's worried about how the money is being spent.
Yeah.
And he's worried that the Senate is ultimately going to turn on the people.
What was that guy's name again?
Elbridge Gerry
He's a hero.
from Massachusetts. ELBRIDGE. Elbridge Gerry, GERRY. Strong anti-federalist. My kind of dude, man. Would have sat around the fire pit with that guy. All right, so moving on with clause 2. Sorry, we got a little confusing there, but I saw that I had that highlighted and I didn't want to pass it up. There must have been a reason I highlighted it. So moving on, so if he approves, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it with his objections to the House, which we've talked about. What is interesting here is when we get into the 10-day, right, that he's got 10 days. President has 10 days to sign this thing. If it just sits on his desk, I'll tell you right now that if I was president of the United States, there would be a whole lot of laws passed that I didn't agree with because I am so unorganized, and that shit would sit on my desk and there would be piles of paperwork and I would forget to do it within 10 days. And next thing you know, Obamacare, right? So if he doesn't sign it within 10 days, automatically becomes law. That's it. He can't just ignore it.
Right.
Unless, and this is called a pocket veto, and it's been used a whole lot in history. If he knows that that the House that Congress is going to adjourn or they're going to go on recess within those 10 days, he can slide that law right into a desk drawer and not even have to worry about it again. Because on day 8, when they adjourn, that's it. It's dead. If they are not in session for him to be able to return this bill, then it dies. And it's been used a lot and has been fought a lot into the Supreme Court. And so far, the Supreme Court has upheld the president's right for that pocket veto. Now, obviously, there's been, and I don't have all of the, I don't even have them highlighted. And like I said, I'm not very well prepared today. There's been a lot of cases where they want to have the president basically be required to act on it. Now, you'll see what Obama did quite a few times is even though they pocket veto these things, that they will still make an official record of their objections to it, just in case later on the courts do rule against them, that now at least it can go off as a normal veto, if that makes sense, because he has his objections that have all been documented. But that's what a pocket veto is. So when they send this thing up, and it's always confusing to me because if Congress is so big on whatever this law is that it's gotten to the president, you would think that they would do it with 12 days left, right, before adjournment. So it's always weird to me when they're willing to adjourn. Now that also gives, I wonder though, if that also gives these slimeball congressmen and senators, they can say, you know what, I supported this bill. The president's the one who didn't do it.
Sure.
I supported it. When really he was like,
That's it, exactly. They
right. So
do that on purpose, and they
if
know,
we were 12 days out, they wouldn't have certainly not put their name on it.
or maybe the thing is so messy, has had so many things added to it that it's become behemoth, and they're like, we'll just send it now, and he won't sign it, and we'll go on break, and it's over.
Yep, probably. I mean, yeah. For sure.
And it's the same way the president gets to save face by letting it sit on his desk 10 days, and then it goes into law anyway. Maybe Obama did that with the Iran sanctions. They brought this bill up. I think it passed huge. And he's still trying to be the good guy to Iran, and he didn't sign the bill. He let it sit there, and it passed on the 10-day deal. And that way.
So what does the last line have to do with this clause?
The last line of the clause?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my dog's barking. Shh, sorry, I can't mute myself.
Really?
I'll mute you if you want.
It says unless Congress by their adjournment prevents its return, in which case it shall not be a law.
That's the pocket veto.
Right. That's the pocket veto we're talking about right now. So if the president, if it's sitting on his desk and he decides that he doesn't want to sign this thing and he just lets it go and they adjourn, then it's a dead bill. It doesn't pass. It's not law.
If they adjourn within the 10 days.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. If they go
Okay,
11 days,
I thought you were saying that it automatically becomes a law then.
It does if they go 11 days without
Right.
adjourning.
11, right. If they are not adjourned in those 10 days, if it's in the, like I said, they have 15 days until they adjourn. So they've got 10 solid days. If they don't adjourn within that time, he doesn't do anything with it, it passes. So he can't just sit on it and not do anything. The only time he can do that is if they're going to adjourn within those 10 days. If they are not, then he has to act on it. He either has to send it back or he has to approve it. But if he just doesn't do anything, then it goes through.
So the
Jim.
likelihood of them giving them a bill and then them adjourning like 5 days later for however long they're going to adjourn, like
If
they wouldn't do that because then it can't go anywhere.
correct.
Well, I think a lot of times it's for optics also.
It is.
If it's a weak bill. It didn't really do what they wanted it to do, and then it got passed and sent to the president, and they don't care. Oh yeah, we passed that bill to help you all out, and then he didn't sign it fast enough, and we had to adjourn because it was Christmas. So he says save face by not vetoing it. They save face by saying they tried to pass it, and he wouldn't sign it fast.
It's just it's a game.
Does he know going in when they adjourn? Or
Sure.
are they, he
Sure.
does?
Now, well,
So are there certain
they
times?
actually,
or-
they get to adjourn, and I would have to look at that. I don't know if there is, they can go into recess. Are the adjournment dates set? Does anybody?
That's what
know?
I'm asking.
They set them on their calendar, but they can always go longer. They can.
And remember, it's going to take both houses to agree to adjourn. Right? The House can't just walk away.
Correct. The
Senate has to approve the House walking away. The House has to approve the Senate walking away
Right.
before anybody can walk away. But yeah, so I would imagine, when is that on their calendar? I mean, he knows, right?
Oh yeah,
He knows the
that.
adjournment's coming.
Oh, they're planning on, December 19th, they're gonna adjourn for the Christmas break or whatever.
Right.
But they'll stay in session for 2-3 more days to hammer something out if he says he'll sign it.
I see it as a big chess game,
Oh, it is.
and they know, and if they're friendly with the president, and then they'll let him know, hey, we're gonna adjourn, so you might want
Well,
to sign this. you know?
And I get it. I get it. In Washington, it is a chess game, right? No matter what's happening in Washington, it's a chess game.
I
But
like
man,
strategery.
why can't we just get back to doing what's right? That's the
Yeah.
thing, man.
Agree.
Just get back to doing what's right.
Because
Don't be putting up bullshit.
we have a swamp of slime balls.
Oh, I know we do.
It's-
Stop it.
It's also because what's right for one person is very wrong for another.
No,
Correct.
you know, well, to a point, in what context?
Oh, you can look at so many things the way that our parties are divided right now. When you look at immigration, some people are saying let everybody in. Immigration is what it is, and that's right for them. And other people are saying no, only let certain people in, or make them jump through the right hoops to get in. And it just varies. What's right for me is very wrong for somebody else.
What it comes down to is you can't virtue signal and do the right thing at the same time.
Well, that's exactly, Dan's got it he hit it on the head. I guess where I was going, Alicia, was, I mean, what's right for me and what's right for Dan? Sure, there's always, right, when you're talking about the citizens, it's always going to be what's right for me and what's right for Dan. But when you're talking about a senator or a congressman doing the right thing, it's not about what's right for him, or it's not about what's right for his lobbyist, or it's not about what's right for his party. It's about what's right for his constituents. And that's what we've gotten away from. They are too afraid about losing their jobs to do the right thing anymore. And it's disgusting.
I agree, but I also struggle because I look at how divided our Senate is. That when you look at how people represent, I look at Nancy Pelosi and I can't stand her. I'll throw that out there. But my struggle is that she puts on a face for people in one place and she keeps getting reelected. So the people she's representing
that's the
must
thing.
agree with her.
Correct. And that's what I was going to say. You might not agree with her out here, right? Out here, you know, people on the East Coast might not agree with Nancy Pelosi, but Nancy Pelosi keeps getting elected. So she is doing right by her people, clearly.
Exactly.
That's what her people want her to do. So I can't fault her.
Right.
Well, I mean, I can fault her for a lot.
Well,
I fault
but
her.
we're not going to talk politics.
No, we're not. But you know what? I think we have to talk politics.
A little bit.
We're not going to talk partisan.
Right.
And I guess you have to look at somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who I think is violating the Constitution, is in it for herself. She's a career politician, but her people, either through apathy or ignorance, continue to vote her in.
Well, and I think that what you were talking about was doing the right thing and representing your people morally and ethically, representing your constituents. But what we get away from is people will represent their constituents, but they'll do it immorally or unethically. And that's where the problem is. Because Nancy Pelosi can come in and say, I support this policy because my people support it, but go about it in a very corrupt show way and take money from different investors and all that. And that's where
I
think, like Renee said, with it being, I think Renee said it, right? It's a chess game.
Yeah.
And I understand how it works. I do. I get it. I get that if I need something important done for people in Ohio, that I'm going to have to play the game somewhere else. I get that. I guess it's to the point, though, if you're coming to me and asking me to do something in order to get my thing done for my people, is it constitutional?
then cool.
Is it, well, like our chief always says, I mean, is it good for Jim Larkin or is it good for the department?
Right.
Is this good for the country or is it good for this congressman? Right? I guess that's what you would have to ask yourself.
Well, my other thing though is I think it's okay for them to fight for their constituents and the people that voted them in. I think what we all have a problem right now with is the manner in which people are fighting with each other. I think there's just a lack of decorum overall, and people are just nasty. They can't agree to disagree, and they can't figure out a way to compromise anymore. And that's, I think, where we're broken down, because I think we all if you live in a city that's strongly Democratic, you're going to vote in a Democratic, you know, representative, and they're supposed to fight for you. So it's just a matter of where our society has kind of devolved, I think.
You guys know where I stand, right?
There's a lot of disagreements out of spite.
Well,
Just-
the problem is too, that we've allowed ourselves to get so far away from the rule book, man.
Right.
The Constitution is what made this country great, and we are allowing people to trample it. We're allowing politicians to trample it,
And
which is just giving a voice to those in the country that don't believe in the Constitution. Without the Constitution, we got nothing. We've
And
got
that's why
nothing. We have complete anarchy.
that's
And
why
that's where
we
we're
need to
getting.
study it.
That's where we're getting right now. We're
Yeah.
getting to that point that because of apathy and ignorance, people don't know what it says, and we're allowing the politicians to tell us what it says.
Right.
Don't you think that there's a lot of politicians in office that have been there for years and years and years, kind of unchecked? So they're able to do what they want to do. People keep voting them in, not because they're happy necessarily, but because they're used to voting the party line, whether it's R or D. And I think at the end of the day, most people are completely uneducated on what's going on in government.
100%. That's 100%
You're
correct.
at the-
And it's apathy. It's apathy.
Mhm.
They don't know. And, you know, it's name recognition, right? I mean, how is Nancy Pelosi, how is Chuck Schumer getting elected time and time and time again? It's because some no-name who decides he's had enough of Chuck Schumer is going to try to primary him out. And when people get to the polls and they haven't done their homework and they haven't done their research, and they get to the polls and they see two names and they're like, well, I know this guy, he's been in a long time, he must be doing okay. And they vote for him. And it's the same shit. And the longer you're in there, the more corrupt you are. You'll never convince me otherwise.
Mhm.
Never
A
convince
lot
me.
of that has to do the big money train that gets behind these candidates
Sure.
too, Jim.
Sure.
Somebody that's brand new to this, they don't have the money behind them.
Sure. And that's, you know what? And that's the tragedy, right? I mean, Renee keeps trying to talk me into it, man. But the fact is, my $12 in my checking account ain't going to get me elected. It's just not going to do it.
I'll
Well, let's
match you that $12. How's that? You're at
All right. My
24.
$24 is not going to do it.
You just
Don't
doubled.
forget
That's
that
what
10 bucks you owe
fundraising
me.
is for.
Fundraising.
But I tell you what, it just happened to me. I voted for Dick Stein in the election, and then just a few days later, I read that he voted for House Bill 6, and I wasn't aware of that.
Oh,
I was like, hey, damn, I wish I would have. I mean, I don't think it would have changed my vote because I wasn't voting the other way anyway, but
I can tell you that, especially since I've started this, I will never make the mistake again of not doing my homework on a candidate.
Mhm.
Never again. Never again. And if I don't do the homework, I know that not voting is just as bad as, you know, voting for the wrong guy, but I would rather not vote. If I show up there and I haven't done my homework on somebody, I'm not giving them my vote. I'm not.
As educated as you are, Jim, how have you not done your homework on the candidates?
Well, there's a lot of down ballot candidates that I'm not familiar with. And you know what? And those are the ones that affect you locally more than the federal government does.
The
right?
judges, definitely.
The judges, right. How many times? And I am guilty of that.
And there's
You go up
only
there
one person on the ballot for the judges.
and you go up there
many
and
times.
And school boards. People don't pay enough attention to school boards.
School
either.
boards, absolutely. But you go up and you look at the ballots for the judges. There's no R&D next to their names, right? So if I got there and there was at least, and I know, but if there was at least an R there, I could say, all right, for the most part, they're
got your values.
conservative. I could maybe get behind, but there are none, and I will not vote.
And there shouldn't be.
There should not be, because a judge should not be R&D.
They should be
Absolutely.
following this book right here and going
But
by
we all
that.
know that's not true, right? We've had
Well,
activist courts, and
yes, I
we're getting off topic here, but
Yes,
but
we
we've
are.
all
So-
had we've seen the activist courts. We know it should not be true, but it is true, and that is why it is so important for you to look at these candidates and look at how their votes went, and look at how you want. I mean, you want to talk about the school board, right? School board's a little tougher because a lot of these people have never been held office. Existing members, though, you can see how they voted, how they're spending your money, right? And we don't do that. The down ballots, man, everybody looks at their congressman. I mean, Jim Jordan, I don't need to research. Stop.
Everywhere.
We're getting off topic, Renee. Moving on.
I know, let's go.
In talking about the activist judges, I think I can bring us back on target here. And Jim, I liked that earlier you stopped and went back to talk about the people that wrote the Constitution, because I think we should keep in mind why they wrote what they wrote and why they decided what they decided. And Elbridge Gerry's quite a character. When you read that last line about in which case it shall not be a law and talking about the pocket veto, we should keep in mind that with the King of England, they would tell people that in order to have a court case, they had to sail back over to England. And then when they got there, the court would be adjourned and they'd be stranded. I mean, the courts could do all kinds of things like that and cases wouldn't get heard. And they were afraid that this was going to happen. So they were trying to build in a mechanism by which nobody could kill something by ignoring it. And that there was a balance of power that had to be answered. You had 10 days to decide on this. If you decide to sit on it, it's going to happen anyway. So if you have an objection, you're going to have to write something about it and send it back. And that was what they were trying to combat, was what had happened to them previously under the King of England.
Right on. And that's exactly right. And I think that's why the Supreme Court upholds the pocket vetoes, though, is because it's not some slick maneuver, right? I mean, Congress.
Right, there is no language in that clause precluding it.
No,
there's nothing in that clause that prevents it from being true. So it's sort of a negative right.
But
it doesn't say that they can't do it.
Everybody from Congress up to the president, everybody knows it's there.
Right.
So I mean, who's hurt by it? Congress knows. Congress knows if they're going to put a bill up within 10 days, that there's a very good chance this is going to happen. So shame on them.
They have to expect it.
Like we said, it's a chess game. It's posture. It is, hey, look at me. Look at me. I voted for this. The president, he's the one. So it's just garbage.
I don't know if they all know that. There's some dummies.
Okay, that's fair. And now we're going to go in and we're going to list the dummies. So we start with, I'm not going to do that. If you
okay,
ever
should I mute him? No.
All right, let's move on to clause 3 here. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on a question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. So we've already talked about a lot of this, just because we got so far off. If you see here, it says that everything except on question of adjournment, because if you remember, the president doesn't get a say in their adjournment, right? They get to decide themselves if they're going to adjourn or not. The president can't make Congress adjourn. So that's the only reason. What's that?
He can't keep them in session either. If they want to adjourn, he can't keep them.
Right.
He's not the king.
Well, he can say, well, guess what? If you adjourn, I won't sign this bill, and then keep them there that way. I mean, more chess.
So I got a note here, and I did not.
Yes, he is.
I did what?
Brad just commented, I'm just a bill.
Oh.
I said, yes, he is.
We should get you a shirt, a Schoolhouse Rock shirt. It says, I'm just a bill. You know what? I'm gonna crowdfund this thing. They only have $12, so it's like shirts are like 19. I'm gonna need help. One of the notes I have here is at Madison.
You got $24, Jim.
24. Well, that's if you come through.
You should have sent your kids to trade school, bud.
Lie, dude. Although I got one.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to be a pilot, so I'll be doing all right if they both be all right. Ella, I don't know. My youngest, I'm not sure. She still wants to be a unicorn, so I don't know how that's going to go. In clause 3, I do have a note written down here, and I don't have it highlighted. I don't know why I didn't highlight it. Madison worried that Congress could evade a veto by renaming a bill simply as a resolution. So they could avoid the veto if they make it a resolution instead of a bill, right?
Then it has no power of law.
What's that?
Then it has no power of law.
Correct. Correct.
They pass resolutions all the time. Happy birthday to so-and-so.
1787. James Madison noted that Congress could evade the possibility. All right, talk amongst yourselves. This seems like something that's important that I probably should have highlighted. Let me just read this real quick. Dave, I know you got something to say. Come on, help me out here.
I got nothing. I'm
Dave,
frozen.
Dave, geez.
Wow.
Well, I think it was already said. It depends on the force of law, and they're trying to, in laying out their chessboard, they're trying to make sure that somebody can't just change terms on something and you know, abracadabra, it either does or doesn't pass now because it's this or that, just on the strength of terminology. And they're setting up the same kind of 2/3 vote for whatever it is, order, resolution, or vote, and that the framework is the same as in the previous clause to ram it through.
All right, so reading it real quick. So Madison was worried about it, right? He wanted to add in the words for resolution. There were a few other words that he wanted to get in there, and it was shot down. However, the next day, apparently Edmund Randolph proposed a freestanding clause with more exacting language, which is what we got here. So Madison's concerns, while this appears that this was going to be part of another clause, and now it is a freestanding clause because of Edmund Randolph, Madison's concerns in getting the word resolution, things like that, you know, put into it, ended up ultimately being accepted. So I guess that's probably why I wrote it down. I didn't highlight anything. I got like 6 pages to go through to figure out why I highlighted something, and I'm freaking out. So we're just going to move on.
So at the end of that, what it says, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill, is that something else? We've talked about bills for revenue and bills have to pass, but what's the case of a bill?
Come on, Dave, don't leave me hanging.
My estimation would be that that's referring to the previous clause's descriptions of how a bill functions. So what they're saying is that the bottom of the clause there, order, resolution, or vote, has the same format as the case of a bill above it. And again, like I said, they're trying to make sure that they lay a framework that somebody can't sidestep. Like he said, Madison was worried about the strength of that clause. And that's a valid point, because what is the definition of a bill? What is an order? What is a resolution? Do those all have the force of law? Don't they? Do they have different applications? Who's responsible for them? So according to the rules and limitations described in the case of a bill, I think the capital C case there indicates they're talking about the description of the way a bill has to be passed or amended or approved in the previous clause. That's how I take it.
Okay, so this clause is just the orders, resolutions, and votes have to follow the case of a bill. It's not, I gotcha, I think.
Right, that's my interpretation of it. And again, to make sure that there's not a way to sidestep bills.
Gotcha, okay.
It takes care of Madison's idea of how they could work around it by
Right.
the bill. So
Yep. Right. He's going to make sure that they can't change the name of something and abracadabra it. Now it's something else, you
Right.
know.
Gotcha.
So talking about according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. Wouldn't that be paragraph 2 that they're talking about?
Yeah.
Correct. That's clause 2.
So, right, so that's all they're doing, right? They're going back to, all they're doing from paragraph, or from clause 3 is referring back to clause 2.
Yep.
Saying that everything in clause 2 must be met.
Every order, resolution, or vote will follow the rules of the case of the bill.
Yep.
So,
That's my take on it anyway.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's exactly what it is. I think clause 2 outlines the case. What are the words we're looking at here?
Case of a bill.
Prescribed in the case of a bill. The rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. And I believe that is what clause 2 says.
Right.
So that's saying you can't propose a resolution in the Senate that starts to raise revenue, because raising revenue has to start in the House, whether it's a resolution or a bill or an order or whatever you want to call it.
Right. The House
Right, but hey, it's not a bill, it's a resolution. No, you can't just call it whatever you want and get money that way. No.
You can't?
Got it.
You can't?
Well, you're not supposed to be able to. I mean, it says it right here pretty clearly. I'm not
Because
saying it don't.
we're gonna get into whether a penalty is a tax soon. So,
That's in the future. Don't get ahead of us.
We got 10 minutes left. 10 minutes.
okay, so let's go to the future. Let's get into it. So let's get into Section 8, Clause 1. Now, Section 8 is where we start giving the government power. This is where we start telling the government what they're allowed to do. We authorize every single thing that they're allowed to do. If we don't authorize it as the people, they're not allowed to do it, period. All right. If they want to amend the Constitution, they can do that, but there are certain rules they're going to have to follow. We'll get into that with Article 5. If it is not in the Constitution, if we do not grant them the authority, they can't do it. So let's
Except
get into
except for executive orders.
to a point. We're going to talk about executive orders too, because they've been abused in the last few decades, I think. And it's going to be up to the courts to rule on it eventually here when we get originalist courts in there. Executive orders are a big deal, man. Some of them are pretty sketch, right? So let's just get into Clause 1 first. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, but all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Pretty simple. I mean, it should be. They have the power to collect taxes. Now, taxes are not just direct taxes, right? Tariffs are taxes, and tariffs are taxes that you end up paying, right? They're indirect taxes. Because when you are going to put tariffs on automobiles coming in here, do you think that automobile manufacturer is just going to eat that? They're not going to eat that. They're going to get their money back, and they're going to get their money back from you. So the tax is being passed on to you. So it's not just your income tax or your property tax. There's a whole lot of taxes out there that are taxes without you realizing they're taxes, right? And tariffs are the biggest one. I mean, it's any tax that the government puts on business is going to be paid by you. And if they weren't, they wouldn't be in business very long. I mean, I don't hold it against any business that's going to pass that on to you or pass it on to me. Like, and tariffs, we'll get into tariffs in a little bit, but I mean, one of the reasons for tariffs was to protect the general welfare of the country. It's gotten a little out of control. What do I have here? Dave, you got something? Anybody got something? Because I got case law.
So I'm looking at the words they use, general welfare, and we talked a while back about welfare and the definition at the time, but general welfare, I'm thinking healthcare. That to me is getting into specific welfare, right? Or is that still general welfare?
No, we're talking about general welfare of the country. We're not talking about general welfare of individuals. That's
There you
not
go.
Okay,
all right. The government's job is general welfare of the country. They have
gotcha.
no right over healthcare. They have no right over your welfare. That's going to be up to your states. That's going to be up to your municipalities or churches. It is not welfare as you're thinking of welfare.
Right.
Right.
Dave, you got a definition of welfare there?
Yeah, I probably do here. I might actually have that in the form. Let me look.
I'm sure
Welfare
you do.
comes on the first of the month.
Exactly.
Here we go. Okay, I've got it. Welfare. This is really simple. So this is profound. Welfare, happiness, success, prosperity, and that's it.
Yeah, all those people on welfare feel like they have that for sure.
Well, this is where it's a slippery slope in that what is your interpretation of general welfare? And I would point out that under the Articles of Confederation, they found that the national government that they had crafted really didn't have enough power to do anything that it needed to do in terms of a national government. So they were determined to rectify those problems with this new document. So the national government had to have some abilities generally overall to raise money and spend money and to regulate interstate commerce. and international commerce. So the roots of some of these words here come from the wreckage that the Articles of Confederation left and the things that didn't work with that. So forgetting for a moment about the application of these things in 2020, back when they were writing this, they were trying to rectify what didn't work immediately before that. I think we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I think when you gave your definition of general welfare, it really lined up with the Declaration and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which was much more
Yeah.
closely aligned.
Right, yes, yep.
The framers could not have even in their wildest dreams imagined what welfare was going to turn into in this country.
Well,
Or that the common defense was going to be almost $1 trillion a year.
Fair.
but I read those together as common defense and general welfare of the United States. So those I don't think that necessarily means welfare like we define it today. I mean,
exactly.
It's kind of, so
exactly.
It doesn't.
So right, Renee, it's and. So
Right.
you nailed it.
Yes.
I agree.
You have to have a common defense in order to have the general welfare as defined in your dictionary.
Right.
Happiness,
Right. And
prosperity.
prior to this, remember, the national government couldn't get the states to pay any taxes to them. They were supposed to, but they couldn't actually do it. And so the national government would have been completely unable to mount a defense had we been attacked again.
Right.
And the people at the Constitutional Convention were not going to let that happen because they were worried that if somebody else figured that out, they would invade. That was a conversation that happened. So this had to be taken care of. And their language that they used at the time was accurate for what they were trying to accomplish. We may have changed the definition,
So we're going to talk about, and I think this is kind of important to talk about. So back in 1918, when we were outlawing child labor, the whole world wasn't outlawing child labor. And Congress decided that they were just going to basically use the Interstate Commerce Clause, and they were going to prohibit shipments of goods produced by child labor. Supreme Court ruled that they could not do that, and they countered immediately with, and I'm just going to read it to you, it's only a paragraph long, with imposing basically a tax, an outrageous tax on those that were using child labor. The Supreme Court struck that down because they were basically using it as an enforcement mechanism instead of what it was designed to be. So it says in Bailey versus Drexel Furniture, 1922, the court struck down the act. The tax, the court argued, was in reality a criminal penalty. It required knowing violations of the act, was notably heavy, 10% of net profits, without regard to the extent of the infraction, and the Department of Labor, not the Department of Treasury, collected part of the tax. In Chief Justice William Henry Taft wrote, "A court must be blind not to see that the so-called tax is imposed to stop the employment of children within the age limits prescribed. Its prohibitory and regulatory effect and purpose are palpable. All others can see and understand this. How can we properly shut our minds to it?" In 2012, so basically what they're saying here is that a tax cannot be a criminal penalty. But in 2012, the court ruled that a criminal penalty can be a tax, which is where we're at now with Obamacare. And we will get to that. Well, we'll talk about it real quick right now since we've only got 4 minutes. So I'll read you the quote here, or I'll read you the one paragraph. Finally, in 2012, the court made a curious inversion of the Bailey decision when it upheld the individual mandate of the 2010 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which imposed a penalty on non-indigent persons who did not purchase health insurance. Members of Congress and President Barack Obama sagaciously denied that the mandate was a tax. but the court, speaking through Chief Justice John Roberts, upheld it as such. The reason the court in Drexel Furniture held that what was called a tax there was a penalty support the conclusion that what is called a penalty here may be viewed as a tax. So I guess I'm confused by the whole thing. How in 1922, what was clearly a criminal penalty could not be used as a tax. But then in 2012, they're saying, hey, look, man, if you don't get health insurance, that's okay. You know, you got to pay that penalty. They're not
I mean, tax.
saying that that was a tax. So I don't know if it's an activist court. I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess we do know. I do. It was absolutely an activist court. And
So,
Is there a distinction between what a tax and what a penalty can be used for? So you can only use taxes for certain programs, but penalties kind of side skirt that?
I think a tax is supposed to be blind, and obviously a penalty would be targeted.
well,
For
and that's
instance,
it. I mean, I
A
think
penalty would be levied against a company or an individual for some sort of wrong, whereas a tax is supposed to be blind. You know, every blue car that we import into Ohio is a 5% tax. Well, that's
Sure.
across the board because it's every blue car.
I don't mean who it's imposed on or why it's imposed, but once it's collected and it's now revenue, is there a distinction?
so at that point,
between
right? I mean,
what
it's
can- what it
probably
can be
general
for?
fund at that point.
Just go into the general congressional slush fund?
I would guess.
I think so. Yeah.
I would guess once that money comes in, it's all general fund money, right? But I think Dave's absolutely right. I mean, if it's going to be a tax, you can't afford healthcare, and so you got to pay, what was it, $1,400, I think? I think that was the penalty.
Yeah.
So
I believe
if you
so.
So Jeff, you can't afford healthcare, and now you have to pay $1,400, but because I have a cheap plan, I don't have to pay it. It's not quite a tax. It's not fair and equitable across the board, right? And I know that taxes aren't fair and equitable. I get that. I mean, I know that.
I don't-
talk about that.
What was the point in penalizing people for not getting the health care? Because there's a lot of people who couldn't afford it and said, I just will take the penalty at the end of the
Because
year.
nobody would have opted into that bullshit from the beginning. They wouldn't.
No, he's right.
because-
That's it.
Yeah.
Right, but you were like, I have family members who were like, I cannot pay what they want. So I literally will just take the penalty at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And all they were doing was hurting them and enforcing a harder ship on them.
Yeah,
did
but
they-
they were,
did
but
they
they were,
collect-
they were still
It was the
making out
previous
though by only paying.
administration's version of everyone gets health insurance.
But do they collect tax on the health insurance you pay for? So essentially, they're getting their taxes regardless if you pay for it or not.
Hey, Jim,
Um,
on that first decision with the furniture and Bailey's,
Yep.
what was they said that it wasn't technically a tax because they were calling it a penalty because another branch was getting some of the funds.
Correct. The Department of Treasury collected part of the tax.
Yeah, well, the Treasury.
I'm sorry. It was the Department of Labor, not the Department of Treasury, collected part of the tax.
Yeah, see, so the Department of Labor, which doesn't collect taxes, the Treasury Department collects taxes, they were getting some of the money, so that made it a
Now,
penalty.
who was collecting this criminal penalty?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Where the money goes
That
determines
was my
whether it's a
original
penalty or a tax.
It was by what?
That
was
Jeff's
my original point.
Right. Well,
Where is
I
that
guess
money
I'm
going
asking
once
you.
it's collected? Is
Dave,
it
do you know?
taxes go one place?
Taxes
Who's
go-
collecting?
If
Taxes
it was
go into
a
the general
penalty,
fund.
could it be going to somewhere else? Is that
Tax-
why it was being?
Was the Treasury
Taxes-
Department collecting it?
Taxes are collected by the Treasury, that's where the money goes.
The penalty was collected by the
Like
Department of
from
Labor.
different places, yeah.
Right, but I'm talking about for Obamacare. For
I
the
know.
individual mandate, who was collecting that?
Well, wasn't that money going right back into the insurance healthcare program?
I'm sure it was.
Right, well, then
They
it's
were
technically a
stacking that
penalty.
on pallets.
Well, it was collected by the Department of Treasury as part of our taxes, though. It wasn't you didn't have to write a check to a different group to pay the penalty. It was an additional tax that you paid to the Department of Treasury.
So it went to the general fund of the
Right.
trustee, and
I
therefore.
believe you were penalized, if I'm not mistaken, you were penalized upon filing your taxes, correct?
Correct.
Right, that's how they got around it.
Yeah.
It's a tax that is a penalty. It's both.
So how do
Abracadabra.
they know? How do they even know when you file your taxes whether you have insurance or not?
You told them. They
Yeah.
asked you.
Yeah.
Your
you have-
employer is
you have
also
to put
required to send in the fact that they've covered you for insurance, so
Okay, but if you're self-employed,
you have to provide proof that you have insurance.
That you've been paying it, yeah.
see, I don't pay attention. I just like send it out, so I don't know that stuff.
Yeah, they send you a form.
New form.
If
Or
you
you
work
just tell
for
your
a
accountant that?
company, if you notice and they provide you benefits, they will send you a thing at the end of the year that says, we have provided you with X amount of benefits for the year 2019, 2020, whatever it is. You'll get that with your taxes, or it'll be separate from your taxes, but saying that your company provided you with insurance benefits for calendar year, whatever year it was.
Your
And then you
summary
either
of
accepted
benefits,
or
yeah.
declined.
No, when you get your paperwork back from your company, like I get my W-2 and then I get a second one that says, yes, I had health insurance, and I have to provide both of those as part of my taxes.
Right.
So, I mean, when you talk about it like this, it seems pretty clear to me, right? It's a tax. It's a tax. It is a tax that Congress isn't laying, or that the House didn't put through. It's a tax by any other name is still a tax. I think Trump made the right decision, getting rid of that individual mandate.
I thought we just covered not being able to change the name of something and make it into something else. I feel like we just said that. It's like I'm talking to my 10-year-old son. I think I just said that,
Now,
you know?
I don't know where, I mean, if the court upheld the individual mandate. So now I guess the fact that Trump did away with it, it would have to be,
In a tax bill.
well, right, but I mean, if it came back, it would be a different, they can't just bring it back, I don't think, right? And if they did, could the Supreme Court rule on it again?
Well, I
They read the Constitution.
that tax bill, I think, is only like a 10-year thing, so that'll expire. So it may come back if they don't fix the law. I think that tax bill is not permanent.
Do the houses, are they the only ones that vote on the okaying of like these taxes, or is it actually us people who get sucker punched by it get a
No,
vote
because
on it?
What you do is elect people to go speak on your behalf. So it's just them.
Well, apparently they don't listen to us anyway, so.
Well, that's why
No, I'm just kidding.
that's why they don't hold office, but for only 2 years. So when they screw up or they pass things
Well,
that you.
whoa,
you can-
whoa. That's why technically they shouldn't hold office for more than 2 years.
Right. Well, that's what
However,
I mean.
they're holding office for 30 years at a time when they don't listen to anything we say.
They wouldn't be millionaires if you didn't let
What
them
they
do
vote
that.
on.
Apathy.
Apathy.
Hey, if you guys are gonna keep making sense, I'm just gonna leave.
It's that time anyhow.
It is that time.
I got a
We're
question
already-
before we go. I got
Yeah.
a real important question.
All right.
Who's the guilty party out here? Who's the guilty party with that smoke detector that keeps beeping because you need a 9-volt battery in there? Who
I
is
was
it?
going to actually bring that up and say, hey, somebody forgot to change their battery on their smoke detector.
That's
No, they
me.
didn't
That's
forget.
me. It's right above me. There's no
can
fire,
see
I
it.
assure you.
I can see it. I
Well,
wasn't gonna
change
call you.
your
There's-
battery.
There's no fire, I assure you. I'm right here by it.
Well, change your
What is your
battery.
address?
So
I
if
will
they're
send the
in-
fire department to change your damn battery.
It was
Oh, wait.
beeping. No, this is
Well,
bullshit.
do I have
It
to
was
pay a
beeping.
tax for that?
It was beeping last week.
Do I have to
It
pay a
was.
tax for that?
It's been beeping since last week.
I only come in this room every so often. I'm
Get
not
your
on here
shit
often.
together.
Dave,
You gotta-
listen, man, for as much as you do for me, I'll put up with the beeping, man.
Hey,
Damn it,
speaking-
All
Jim.
right.
Listen,
I'll put
man.
up with the beeping, but I want you to be back. So please change your detector's
we
battery.
will-
I'll get
listen,
around to it.
We'll kick Dan out before.
We're
Hey,
all,
speaking
we're
of
all
which-
witnesses to this. The next week, we're gonna be saying, he was a really great guy and, you know,
And to Dave, yeah.
We'll be opening this thing up with a GoFundMe account.
Right,
Replace Dan,
right.
replace Dave's house. All right, listen, man, it's late.
Speaking, hey, Jim, one more thing, please.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
This is
stop.
how it happens.
Hey, this has to do what we're talking
play
about. There's a
Sam's.
federal excise tax right now on small brewers that has to become permanent by the end of this year. or it repeals to what it was prior to them coming up with the Craft Brewers Tax Reform Act. It has to be passed by the end of this year. There is a link that I will send it to the group that is through the Brewers Association. The link will pretty much just have you fill out your information. It's already got the verbiage to be sent along with your letter to your congressman. And this is federal. This isn't local in Ohio. This is federal. So it doesn't matter what state you're from. If you could just fill that out, it'll
What are they
automatically.
doing? They're trying to tax you more?
Correct. Yes. They're trying to tax the small brewers more. So they could,
Why?
it's less competition with big brewers. And I mean, even with this year with COVID and everything, all the other shit that's happened, if they're going to start having to pay more per barrel than they used to, that's going to hurt them even farther.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I'll
man,
send the link.
for real. Send the
Yeah,
link.
I'll send the link to
I'm
the group.
interested.
It'll automatically, when you put in your zip code, it'll automatically send it to the right congressman. So I have to just fill out your information and it'll send the letter with verbiage. I've already got
No,
one.
and let me just real quick. I know we got to go. When you do these things, these forms online, where you just sign your name and it sends a form letter, I always question how much they're really caring about getting form letters. Right? I don't know. Now maybe they.
I got a response back from Bob Gibbs today saying I've taken this into consideration. Thank you.
Bob
Maybe
Gibbs.
it was another form letter.
See, there Renee's working hard for his people.
Mhm. He probably sent him a form
I haven't
letter.
heard from Sherrod Brown yet.
Listen,
I haven't
all I'm
heard
saying
from Sherrod Brown
is
yet.
something
But
that's important to you. Don't
Sherrod
just send a
Brown.
Heard
letter.
from Connie yet.
Listen,
But if
something
you like
that's
craft
important to you,
beer,
don't just send the letter. Call and leave a message. I think that's going to carry more weight too. Send the letter, but call. Just take a couple minutes out of your day and call.
right. So if you like craft beer, I would absolutely call and send the letter.
Well, if they're not taxing bourbon, I don't really care. So
They are, it's distillers, it's wineries, it's everybody. It's
I want
anything
Barry
that's-
Gibb to respond to
it's
me.
Small alcohol producing places, like, Tom's Foolery over in Chagrin Falls, they're gonna tax them higher. Any small wineries, Mattis Winery out in Oberlin, they're gonna tax them higher. It's anybody who's got a small alcohol producing facility is gonna get hurt by this.
again, well, they will get hurt, but again, it's just going to get passed down to us. But then the question is going to be is
Correct.
When do people stop going because it's just too
Right,
much?
it's too expensive.
Right.
What's the tipping point?
Right.
And that's what big beers or big wineries are hoping for.
So once I sign this, will I be put on the free samples list?
If you walk in your local brewery and tell them you voted for it, they might give you one.
You may get put on a watch list, and that would be anybody who's
I'm already on a watch list.
now because you're not doing a good job. I'm very disappointed in you.
Not good for my clients.
All right, let's go. Let's wrap this thing up. I'll head over there. What are we doing? Hold on real quick. What are we doing here, Renee? Are we going to do another Zoom for after, or should we just go to Facebook Live?
We can do another Zoom for after.
The same link?
We can do the other link. So
What other link?
the other one that I posted, but we could do the same link if you want. I don't care.
We just won't record it
We just won't record it.
unless there's something that needs to be recorded. All right, so that's what we'll do. Listen, we'll come back to this Zoom. Once she ends this meeting, just go ahead and click back on this link and we can get back in there. If you want to keep talking about this, Mike, if you want to keep talking about that, I'm interested. I'd like to know a little bit more about it, but I just don't want to take this one too long. So.
Right.
Okay.
Sound good? All right, I'll see you guys here shortly.
Clause 2 next week.
Thank
And
you.
I'll post the link before I hop into the Zoom.
Okay, very good.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And stop and
Smoke
record.
detector.
See you shortly.
Thanks, Jim.
And you know what? Just keep Dan out of